Oh my
Y'all
goodness.
gotta let that rock a little bit.
Hey, you turn it on, turn it on.
So ambitious. I like that song. So ambitious. Yeah.
Okay, what is it about that song?
It's just his confidence of, it's just this Jay-Z's confidence of just being ambitious about conquering, doing whatever he wants to do, you know. And the lyrics are, you know, it's always about someone doubting him. And he said, "I'm so ambitious, I could do this." And some other lyrics, you know, I can't say right now, but they really inspire me as well.
Is that you, so ambitious?
Yeah, you have to be, always, because you just, that's just the way I live. Very ambitious. I think there's always a new challenge, and how do you take on that new challenge is important. And you have to be ambitious about it. If you're not, then you're going to fail at whatever you do if you're not ambitious. Yeah.
And just piggybacking off of that, and then we'll get right in. Because there are times when you have challenges in life.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
How do you stay positive? How do you, Jeff Tweedy?
Well, I have two wonderful sons that help me stay positive, that keep me young. They keep me 32 years old. But I think that you have to look at what you have and be blessed of what you have versus, you know, how bad the situation could really be. And I look at my surroundings. I look at some people is not as blessed as I am, and how do you turn that into understanding what they've gone through, and taking your blessings and knowing that someone helped you through this journey. And my mom, who's no longer with me, helps me every day through this journey. So that's important to me.
Absolutely.
Oh, you can clap for mom.
Yay! Oh my. Matter of fact, now was she a fashion inspiration to you?
Yeah, my mom dressed her ass off. She was very much a fashion inspiration.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, back then, you know, that was it.
Yeah.
You know, the parents, they dressed up. I mean, y'all know y'all parents, they dressed up. That was it.
Right.
I mean, you went to school and you saw your aunts and uncles. You know, some of my uncles used to wear jumpsuits and shit. I mean, like, my sister's here, she could vouch for you. My Uncle Zook was fly. Uncle Zook used to wear jumpsuits with a big ring. Uncle Zook was fly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's in the family, that flavor.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we come from that. You know, we come from kings and queens.
Right.
So we understand that. We know how to do that. It's natural to us.
Right.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your career and how you started. You got your tea.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you.
So, and correct me if I miss anything in here. So, I have you started out as a stock boy
Right.
in your hometown of Washington, D.C., in the iconic Britches of Georgetown. Then you were a manager of Neiman Marcus in Chevy Chase men's department. Is that, and is it correct? Is that where you met Ralph Lauren?
Right. Yes.
And Jeffrey Vance?
There were people who were greatly influenced in my life, and there are a few that I'll thank a little later. But you know, a gentleman named Michael Winter, who was important in my life, helped me at Bridges of Georgetown, where I met Jeffrey, and he was really one of those guys that took me under his wing. And yeah, but meeting Ralph Lauren was an experience, and it was one of those moments of where you meet someone and they give you their card, and you really think that by them giving you their card, they're just gonna blow you off and take a message when their guy calls. And it didn't happen that way, because what happened was that I sort of prepared myself for that challenge. And one of the things I speak about a lot is how do you prepare yourself for that opportunity? And I don't think a lot of people do that. And what I did was, at Neiman Marcus, I would write notes to Ralph Lauren. This happened over a 6-month period. I would write notes, you know, coming from being a stock boy and a salesperson and manager, you used to write notes to your clients. Thanks for buying those sweaters. So I became crafty at that. So I would read the trade, and Ralph Lauren opens a new store in London. Mr. Lauren, congratulations on opening a new store in London, Jeff Tweedy. Ralph Lauren would, birthday, happy birthday, Mr. Lauren. I call it stalking from a distance.
But it was good.
But it was good. So what happened when I got up enough nerve to actually pick up the phone and call, the assistant, it went through the first person, they said, please hold, to the executive office, and I started getting nervous, like they're really gonna put me through. This is not good. And then it got to his personal assistant, and she said, Jeffrey, hold on. what do you mean, hold on?
Right. Like she knew you.
She knew me, but what happened after I spoke to him and we situated the interview at FIT, and that was all pleasant. For 2 days, I couldn't figure out how she knew me and how she put me through so quickly. And then I realized those cards and those notes were my preparation for that phone call. Because she thought I was a friend. Because she saw that name, Jeffrey Tweedy, over and over, that she was like, oh, he must be a friend. Because the assistants get the notes and the cards.
Right.
So I prepare myself without realizing I prepared myself.
Isn't that
so
amazing?
What I do now is always, when you say there's a challenge, when you ask me about challenges, I sort of look at how do I prepare myself for that challenge or prepare myself for that next step. And we always have to do that. I call it taking the steps before you take the elevator.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I think, and you can talk to this more because, like I say, I was the person who wanted to be in the industry, but you've been in it. And I think a lot of times people don't do that, and they are not prepared to really get into fashion. You know, what do you say to that? I mean, here you are, this president, the CEO, incredible record, but you started out, as some of us would say, at the bottom.
Yeah,
but
humble.
people don't want to do that.
But you know, to prepare yourself, you have to take the steps. Like everyone, you know, you have to learn. And I think it was beneficial for me to take my time and learn the steps. When I was a stock boy, I learned how shoes were made and what's the best fabric and silhouettes and trim and button and how things are supposed to fit. And going into Neiman Marcus, I learned about the business of it, like how sales are done, how you're supposed to hit your quota every month. What does floor space look like? What is dollar per square foot and things of that nature? So those steps all prepared me for being in the position I'm in today. And obviously it wasn't just like I just went from Neiman's right to working for Puff. No, it was things in between.
Absolutely.
And I actually got fired from Britches.
You got fired.
Yeah.
Y'all hear that? This man got fired. But
I got
look at him
fired.
now.
It's the only time I ever got fired.
What? Can you talk about how you got fired?
That's not gonna
We can
do
skip
it,
over it.
Make sure I knock somewhere.
Oh gosh. But no, the thing
Puff
about
could
it
be
is,
like right now, he ain't doing that good right now.
but you were humble,
Um,
and you paved the way through that.
yeah.
And I heard you say, when we were at WBLS the other day and the question came through and Deja asked you, could you design? And you said, yeah.
Yeah.
And then in watching you, when we spoke over the last week, watching you tell the photographer certain different things to do, knowing all of that, how, and I think this is really important because this is Live Masterclass, we're talking business here because we want to get back to business. As a business manager, as president, CEO, when individuals that are designers are thinking about hiring someone, what questions should they be asking them? Because you know it all.
Right.
And clearly that's why you've been a success.
Right.
And in you taking those steps,
Right.
you prepared along the
Right.
way. So what do you say to that designer you need to be asking this person? And then what do you say to that person who's trying to be that business manager? And I'm going to tell you why I'm asking this, because I'm here to empower my people and I have to tell them the truth. And I've run into a lot of situations where people have said to me, oh, well, I have a business manager. Okay, well, what are they doing for you? And they don't know. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what to look for.
Right.
So talk about that a little bit.
Well, when you say I know it all, I got some of my staff here, so you can't say I know it all in front of them. Because they're like going, no, he doesn't know it all.
But you have a clue of it.
But no. But when I say I don't know it all, I'm one of those people that ask people, what do you think? But I think when you start any business, young business, one of the things you should do is I meet a lot of people who go, can I get your card so you can help me with this? Can I get to this person? You got to figure out your community, like, right? So if you're a designer, who's the business person that you might know that you could say, you know, let's do this together? And then when you're in school, when you're in a community, you should try to do that. Because a lot of times people try to take the elevator again to go right up to it, as opposed to understanding people in your community. There's some people who want to be business people. There's somebody who wants to be a CFO. There's somebody who might be a photographer. So how do you get together and form a company, right, that the 4 or 5 of you are benefiting from that? And then it becomes easier. Then you're not trying to find a photographer that you can't afford. You got someone right in your circle. You're not trying to find a financial person to do your business plan. You have someone right in your circle.
Right.
So I think that's what I would encourage people to do that are trying to get into the business and trying to get into any business. There's people in your community. There's people that down a block from you. You just got to open your voice and ask those questions.
So,
And also, digital world, You could put up a post, say, I'm looking for someone in Harlem who's a CFO, starting out my new business plan, and how do we, do this together?
Are there certain results they should be, because we have different levels here, and different levels will hear this video when it's played. Are there certain levels, certain things they should be looking for in that manager to produce?
Right. I think in any business, any creative world that you're in, whether you're an artist or in the fashion world, you have to understand the business of it. And I think that if you look at Ralph Lauren, Ralph had Jerry, who was his brother, who ran the business. Calvin had Barry Schwartz, who ran the business. So
And Sean has you.
thank you. I'm just putting me in the role with Barry Schwartz. That's a compliment. But you have to understand the business part of it. And if you don't understand the business part, you don't know what to ask in those interviews. You don't know what your expectations should be to run your business, to get your first design out, to get your first company out. You have to understand the business of whatever you do. And it's a lot of designers, a lot of people have great ideas, but they don't know how to get it started. But you got to do business 101 with anything you do. It's got to be business 101. I highly recommend that.
So for some of the designers, and you've said business 101, what are some of those things, like the financial pieces?
They don't have to be, CFOs, but there's tools, there's things you can look at on the internet just to look at business 101. And it is, how do you handle your funds? What makes sense? What should your investment be? What amount of your investment what should your return be? You can't produce a handbag or a garment or produce a film without having an idea what your budget is and what things cost. So that's what I mean by business 101. And if you want to be a filmmaker, there's a book or internet you can go and look at business 101 of filmmaking financially and give you that information. But I think a lot of times creatively we go into things without understanding the business, and people fail.
I've run into, I remember one young lady, she said, I just want to create. I just want to create. But you got to understand what to look for. You're going to, have challenges. And I remember hearing Puff talk about, I don't know, was it Andre? I don't know. But he was saying how the numbers for fashion started to eclipse his music.
Right. Yes. Sean John became bigger than Bad Boy at one time. Yeah.
That's because of you.
Some of it, yeah. And because of him. Working with him is interesting.
So let's talk. So now, when Sean John began to evolve, 3 to 4 months to answer him.
Yes.
Why? And what changed to make you say yes?
There was a few things. At the time, my mom was ill, so I wanted to move back to the East Coast to focus on that. And I didn't want to start a new company. It's a lot of work starting a new company. And I took on that challenge at Cross Colors and Caulk and I took on that challenge with Spike Lee, starting a new company. And I just didn't want to start a new company. It's so much work. It's so much work. And I had a guy who just got $53 million from Arista Records, so he thought I could do everything. Like, Jeff, you could run the warehouse. You could do that yourself. No, I can't, Puff. We got to have people to do that. No, Jeff, you could start the women's line. No, Puff, you got to have people to do that. So it was just a lot to do. I had to contemplate whether or not I wanted to start a new company or did I just want to go into something and be part of it. Because the other, and Sherry knows this. Where's Sherry? Sherry's great. Right there. Sherry, who works for Shark, and Damon, who got me involved in speaking. Thank you. Damon Fubu had offered me a major contract to come join him. And I just couldn't make up my mind what I wanted to do. I just wanted to be on hiatus for a while, to be honest with you. And I really didn't go back to work for about 6 months. And when I decided to do it, it was a conversation that really took me over the top with Puff. So Ambitious, that song. And I'll tell you the call. I had an apartment in LA and an apartment in Brooklyn. And one day, Saturday afternoon, and he and I had been going back and forth for probably 3 or 4 months on contract, come do this, come work with me. We could do this, it's gonna be great, wooing me, jump on the plane with me to Paris. It was just a lot of things for 3 to 4 months. And then finally he called me one day, and I was in my apartment in Brooklyn on a Saturday, and he said, we were talking, he said, I'm really getting I can't continue to talk about this. I need you to come and do this. And whatever you want, we can make it work. And I said to him, I said, well, my financial guy is not available today. Jim Hart, who's still my financial guy to this day. And he said, Puff said something very interesting to me. He said, your financial guy, does he work for you or you work for him? And I said, well, shit, that's a tough question. I know where he's going. I said, he works for me. He said, well, call his ass and tell him it's time to go to work. And I did that. So, and Derek Ferguson here? Oh, so Derek knows part of this story also. So we met at the Trump Hotel back then, okay. And we sat in the lobby first. We scribbled some things I was asking for, Jim and I. We went upstairs and met with Puff and his attorney, and by 2 days, the contract was done, and I started the business. That was in late '97.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you started in a cubicle? Mm-hmm. A secrecy shrouded?
It's funny because we were at 1450 Broadway, I think the address was, and it was IMG building, was it? BMG. And it was the music company, and then Puff would say to me, if people walk by, tell them it's tour merchandise, because I really wasn't supposed to be up in there. Because he can't have another business. That's how Puff gets down. He can't have another, they're giving him this space to run his record company, but he got another business up in the record company. Like, that's his hustle, right? So Puff always said to me, if anybody asks you what you're doing, just say it's tour merchandise. I was like, okay, it's tour merchandise. So I would have this cubicle, and I would be in the office probably 8:30, 9 o'clock. In the music world, the world doesn't start until like 11:30, 12 o'clock, and it's not over until 12 o'clock at night. Then people go to the studio. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that. So I would leave hats and samples out in the cubicles, right, overnight. And I'm thinking, like, it'd be fine. It'd be fine. So I remember one day I had like 50 hats laid out in every color of the script, like black with white, red with white, all colors. And I got in the next morning, I was like, yo, what the f-? All my hats are gone, right there. All my hats are gone. And I went and told Puff when he finally woke up and came in, he says, well, whatever colors they didn't take, let's not make those.
Smart. Smart.
I hate you. I hate smart. You. You're so smart. But
wow.
I mean, those are the type of things that, for that guy, he's just like, he gets it. I mean, it's just like, don't make the hats no one took. That makes sense.
So now talking about, like in production, what, reportedly, Sean is a celebrity. So reportedly, he utilized a $100 million private label manufacturer. Everybody can't do that. So what do you say as far as picking out the right manufacturer for your product? What do you say to those designers, those business managers? Because in my mind, and we want to talk about that too, what a business manager really should be doing for a designer.
Right.
Was that you involved in helping pick out those manufacturers? And what
Right.
do you tell a designer who needs to pick out someone?
Well, even though we had major funding and Puff just got $53 million from Aristone on his music deal, we didn't really need money. The first collection was only 11 pieces. That's it. And I think that what happens with a lot of these designers or anyone that wants to go into the business, they'll show you 15 sketches of stuff. No, pick one or two and stick with that. The thing we were known for was the black hat with the white script. That was it. We produced millions of those and just gave them away. And it wasn't about a big collection. It was 11 styles. So imagine if you're starting a new business, whether it's technology, whether it's film, or whether it's fashion, or whatever it is, how much time it takes you to make that one sample or to shoot one film. Why can't your film be 7 minutes versus an hour? Why can't your collection be 2 styles versus 20? So if you don't have the funding, if you don't have the manufacturing, start small. But there are manufacturers out there, but you got to start small. Right. I guarantee you, if you go up and down 7th Avenue and Broadway and go in with great 2 styles, someone's going to help you make it. But if you go in with 15, they're going to look at you like, why? So we started, the collection was only 11 styles. Now we ship 35 to 45 styles a month.
Wow.
Right, Scott? Yep. Something like that, right? Scott's my vice president of design.
Hi. And so, that business manager, that businessman should they be, I would think, very instrumental in helping that designer pick out the best manufacturer?
It's knowing the business 101. They know that what is your bandwidth of what we can really take on. What can you really take on? And the business manager should know that. Your CFO should know that, or somebody you bring in that understands your business plan. But I think it starts with, we started with as much money as Puff had, we still started with a business plan. And our business plan was maybe 12, 14 pages. And you got to get back to having a business plan, because that is truly your vision, right? So your business plan is your vision, then your business plan becomes your strategy. And how do you, stick with that strategy, whether it's good or bad, stick with the strategy. And, the word business plan just sort of, people say, how do you do that? You have to have a business plan.
So it sounds like something we need to focus on with people.
That's when I say business 101, it's a business plan.
Maybe
You
we
have
need to
to
help some people learn to write them.
learn to write them, or, you could say to yourself, I have 5 missions or 5 things I want to accomplish with whatever I do, film, whatever I want to do. There's 5 things I want to accomplish. Those 5 things can become your business plan.
Right.
But you got to have it in writing. You got to know it. You got to be able to walk up to someone and say, forget my sketch. My business and strategy is this. Because that's what, I want to hear what's going to make you different, not a T-shirt, not a film. What makes it different?
Right. So, and clearly your business plan was incredible. Were you involved in writing that plan?
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Puff
Clearly,
wasn't doing that.
he was.
Yeah,
Well, clearly you did.
I did the business plan.
And you did the marketing piece too?
From day one, I did everything.
And
But I had help. I had help. When we first started the company in 97, 98, I think Scott was with me in 98, was the first designer. But a lot of it I set up, with Derek's help, the warehousing, the operation, the financing, my first trip, it was funny, Tommy Hilfiger was one of the people who wanted to be our partner. Okay. And Puff didn't want him to be our partner. But what he did was he gave us some of his manufacturers for me to work with, as well as other friends I knew in the industry, not just Tommy. There's a bunch of people gave me in. So my first trip to Asia by myself, before we had any piece of garment made, was that I had to go and build relationships with these manufacturers in China. Whether it was in China, whether it was in Taipei, whether it was in Hong Kong. My first trip was 8 days. And my trip was, believe it or not, back then it was a press kit, right? So you open the folder up, and the first thing you saw was Puff Daddy with the tank top on with these gold chains. So you imagine in China and Asia, meeting with these manufacturers, and you're trying to explain who Puff Daddy is, right? And you're trying to explain what rap music is. And you're trying to explain what we're trying to do. But with that picture next to it was my business plan and the vision for the company. There was nothing else. I had no sketches, because we weren't there yet. I had to build a relationship first. And I met with probably 13 different factories. I'm talking about huge factories. I'm talking about people who are doing, Levi jeans, million pair a year. I'm talking about these are big people. And I met with probably 13 or 14 of them, and 3 of them said, yes, I'll do your 96 pieces, which is like a joke. And I think out of 3 of them, 2 of them are still manufacturing for us. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of them was doing my velour suit, David, right? And his first order, which was a small, he used to do all Ann Taylor production back in the day, all Ann Taylor. So you imagine those units. My first order was 140 units in 3 different colors. That was like, that's not even enough to you laugh at that. And probably 5 years later, he was making 1 million velour sweatsuits for us. But that was a relationship. He believed in us. He truly believed in us. And not only did he believe in us, he believed, because he didn't know me, he didn't know Puff, he believed in the vision and the strategy that I showed him.
That says a lot right there.
Right.
And so, clearly it's paid off, because in 2000, it was the first CFDA nomination. Reported 100 million in sales. Then in 2007, you had the Fifi Awards for, you had Unforgivable. And then in 2009, I Am King.
Yep.
But the thing about that was, when we look back at 2004, after 4 nominations, then you won the CFD award.
Susan Lucci of, the CFDA award.
I think we have a
it was-
picture.
We-
And you beat out Michael Kors and Ralph Lauren?
Yeah, right.
Sorry.
That was big.
Talk about that
was
moment, you know, that pressure.
Well, the funny story was we would go to the CFDA award, and I remember the first year, we just knew we was gonna win. And I'll never forget this. Puff was wearing a pink Versace suit, and that particular night, he lived on Park Avenue. That particular night, he wanted to drive in a Ferrari. He wanted to drive, and Puff can't. It was like, as I'm holding a little thing of wine, 2 things of wine, I'm like, yo, you want me to drive or you got this? So he wanted to pull up in front of the museum where they hold the CFDA award back then. But I remember he was sitting in the seat next to me. He was scribbling. He was like, what's that person's name again? Yeah. What's that? What did they do for us? Yeah. So he had this whole speech ready.
Right.
And they would go, and the award goes to, not us. He would go, hand it back to me. I would just put it in my pocket. I actually kept all of those award speeches. I have them now.
You have them?
Yeah, I have them now.
Oh my gosh, you
Know
should
what those
frame.
going to be worth later?
Wow.
I actually have them. Then the 5th time, he wasn't prepared. He walked up, he was like, I don't have nothing prepared because for 4 times I wrote it out for y'all and y'all didn't want to hear it.
Wow.
So,
Do we have
Yeah.
a picture of that winning night? Maybe. But, you know, and talk about that moment for a minute, you know, the pressure. You know, now there's the pressure, okay, you've won. Now the pressure to win again.
yeah, but it wasn't really pressure to win again. It was pressure to keep the company at a level that people were expecting. Because keep in mind, our first fashion show most fashion shows right now in the United States, in New York City or LA, is an average of probably like $400,000. When you do Gucci shows in Europe right now, they're probably $1 million. Our first show was $899,000. The last show was $1.6 million. Right? It was crazy money for 17 minutes. Because a fashion show is only 17 minutes, 15, 17 minutes. So the level was just you come to a Sean John show, it was just like, oh my God. It was like more. It was like, okay, let's bring some chandeliers. Let's have somebody jump from there to there. And it was just overwhelming. And it got very stressful. There was a documentary, wow, that's called I Am King that came out on E, I think it was. You guys should look at it. It's pretty interesting. It's called I Am King. It's making of the Sean John last fashion show. And it shows moments of Puff and I just going at it. Like, oh yeah. I mean, moments of, I'm just like, I said something about Anna Wintour. I should have never said it, but it was okay. But it was just those moments. Y'all should check it out. It's called I Am King.
Okay.
It's a good documentary. And it gives you really behind the scenes of what shows are made of. And this is not the flashy, pretty stuff. This is how you get it done. The late nights and people sleeping on sofas in the building, and it was hard work.
So when you hit several points there, when we think about you and Sean, because I'm laughing seeing y'all going at it, you know, talk about that relationship between that designer or the visionary and the business manager. You know, what should that be like? You know, do you all have similar personalities? Is that why you're able to work together, or how should that relationship be?
Yeah, we're both November men.
Okay.
Both Scorpios, and this is what? Yeah, it's because we that word I can't. When Puff says won't stop, can't stop, he believes that shit. Like that's like, and he I mean, my staff all worked for Puff. Derek was there. I mean, we live that. We really live that, and we got to a point where we can go through walls because he instilled that in you. And he gave you no reason why you can't do it. I mean, some of the things we were doing was just unheard of. So there was always a balance. When I close the door and call him Sean, when I say Sean, and Derek knows this, when we call him Sean, that means you're fucking up the money. Right, Derek? Excuse my language. When you call him Puffy and Puff Daddy, everything is good. When it's Sean, it's like, yo, we need to talk.
That's like the mother calling you?
Yeah, we need to talk. And there was always a balance. It was a good balance, though. And we had mutual respect for each other. I would never, question him in front of anyone. We would sit down as men, close the door, and say, this is what I think we should do and not do, or things of that nature. Sometimes he listened, sometimes he didn't.
Well, and that's important because you're really steering the ship. You're guiding him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how are you interacting with him to guide him on the business moves? And what, what are some of the things you're saying? I mean, I know there's some things you can't say, but
Listen, everyone, Puff was always looking for how do we bigger in growth, business, bigger fashion shows, taking on different divisions or different opportunities, another fragrance, another award. And I just think you have to have the balance of what is reality and how do we do it in the proper time. And I think what I was able to do is lay out a plan for him that said, I can't do fragrance today, but give me 18 months or give me 9 months and we'll start that conversation. Mm-hmm. So there was always those steps in the business plan. We had a 3-year business plan that spoke of those things. We knew when we wanted to launch a fragrance or start a conversation with an Estee Lauder or someone to start a fragrance. That was always in the business plan. It was never sporadic. I mean, Puff Daddy is sporadic, but we sort of know how to hold him sometime, right. And he understood it.
And
does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
And fashion shows, because you no longer do the fashion shows, and I'm glad you talked about the money with that.
Right. The times have changed now. 2008, 2010 was very difficult for the fashion industry. There was a lot of specialty stores that went out of business. There was a lot of brands that went out of business. It was a tough time for everyone. So to go back and do those kind of fashion shows for $1 million, $1.5 million, is sort of like you're not being fiscally responsible, to be honest. Although he would disagree right now.
So okay.
But
okay.
I would say you're not being fiscally responsible right now.
Well, clearly, you're right. And I have to go here.
You got a what?
I have to go here.
Okay.
Fashion shows. We just finished Fashion Week. For me, with this organization that focuses on getting people to think business, I run into people and, I ran into one person and they said, well, I'm showing at Fashion Week. My question was, who are you showing to?
Right.
I had someone say, a lot of what's on the runways is trash. So, yeah. When, and then I had someone, no, I'm not going to go there. When should someone really think about you say go there. When should someone really think about investing in a fashion week? I want to get back to business. Yeah, I wasn't in fashion, but I worked in corporate. So, we got to get back to business in order to be successful. I want to help my people be successful. So when should they be thinking about doing a fashion show? What should they be thinking about doing? And what kind of questions should they be asking before, I have to go here, before they go to this person's fashion show or this person's fashion show? Right. And show.
You should do a fashion show when you're financially comfortable and you feel comfortable about it. And you know that you will get a response and you know that your investment is worth it. If your investment is not worth it and you're not going to get the impressions that you want, you're not going to get the eyes on your show, and you're not going to get retailers front row buying it, and you're not going to get influencers posting it, then you shouldn't do a show. People get excited about doing a show. I don't know why. That cell phone thing is your show. You could do a presentation. You could have one model and continue to take pictures of that one model with different outfits and say, hey, I'm at Fashion Week, look at my collection. If you don't get the response you get, you just save $300,000-$400,000. I just don't understand why people, I meet designers all the time, they say they want to do a show. I'm looking to do a show, do you know models? And I'm looking at them like, why you want to do a show? For what reason? What are you getting out of that show? And you have to understand, what is it's, again, business 101. Your investment is this, my expectation is this.
And when they do a show, what do they need to be thinking about? I have to go here. I had someone who thought that the store was going to advance them so they could prepare their product.
That ain't happening. No store is going to advance you money to do a show. No. No store is going to advance you. That doesn't make sense. Who would advance? What store would advance you? They don't advance Gucci. How would they advance you? That doesn't make sense. And that's what I mean by business 101. If it was business 101 and you took the time to learn and talk to people about fashion shows, investment in fashion shows, and understood what the retail climate is like, you would know that that's not possible. One of the things that I encourage people to do who want to be in the fashion industry, no matter what age they are, is to go work at a small store, retail store. I know it might sound like I'm not going to work in no damn store, but that's the best education. I'm not saying a store like Big Macy's, but a small store, because you get a chance to learn everything about the business.
Right.
I still enjoy selling. I still love to go into a store and work in a store and sell. I do. It's something about it. This is personal. It's exciting, but spend time learning the business. But also, you can, if you don't want to work in a store, get to know a person, the manager of a store. Cultivate with that person and invite that person for drinks and say, tell me about the retail climate. They can tell you so much. And that's what I mean by that community, right? So if you get a community, if you know someone at Bird Oak Goodman, spend time with that person. Talk to them about traffic, flow. Why is the store set up that way? What does the buyers think of this? When is market? How important is spring to summer to fall to holiday? All those things you can learn. And that's what I mean by putting that community together, people that are right at your fingertips.
Right. So in talking about that, Sean John had a couple of different models that you went through. Talk about those models, selecting that business model that works, because clearly, and I joke, I call you the licensing king, because you've inked a lot of deals. Talk about some of those deals.
Right.
How many deals have you inked with Sean John?
We had a lot of deals. We still do at this point. We ship now 16 different categories. And we're working on a women's deal. We're working on another kids deal. We're working on a new fragrance launch this year.
Oh.
But what we realized is that when we started the company, we wanted to do kids clothes. The best thing to do is find the people who are the best at making kids clothes and do a license agreement with them. Our license agreement, some people think that when you do a license agreement, you lose control. You really don't. Our contract was 62 pages. We got total control. You sneeze, we want to know about it because we have to protect our brand.
Right.
So in that contract, we have approval of the vision, who you sell. You have to work within our brand DNA. We have quarterly meetings with them to talk about their business and how they grow their business with my category. We approve every piece of product. Every piece of product we approve in our office, right, Scott? We approve every piece of product. So if you're doing loungewear, we approve the underwear. Yes, we do, because we want to protect our brand.
And that's good, because I heard a horror story recently about someone who got into a deal with, clearly they must not have had those 62 pages. Talk about when you're going in those type of deals, what you need to be looking for, some tips.
Well, there's also levels of leverage, right? We have a lot of leverage because of the success of the first thing we did, which was the men's. So with the success of that, we really sort of dictated a lot of what our suit deal looked like and what our fragrance deal looked like, and because of the success of the men's. But you in your deal, you should know about approvals. You should know the length of the contract, the terms of the contract. You should know what your royalty is. You should know where they're manufacturing it. You should know that wherever you I mean, it's a lot, but you should know, one of the things you should know about is where they manufacture it is a compliance factory, which means they're child labor or things of that nature, exit doors. You should know all of that. And that's one of the things we had to know about because we have a celebrity brand. But there's a lot of things in the contract you should know about. But you got to know terms. You have to know what your royalty is. You have to do your homework on the company. Some of our partners are PVH and Peerless, and PVH does Calvin dress shirts and Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein, and so they're one of the best. Peerless does Michael Kors suits and Ralph Lauren suits and Calvin Klein, so we know they're one of the best. But if you don't know, do your homework on the company.
And then some of the collaborations you've had, most recent, The 9-piece with John Michael Basquiat.
John Michel Basquiat.
See, you know I need to take
It's
a
okay.
class.
No, it's a difficult one.
You had Playboy, The White Party,
Yeah.
NBA
Yeah.
multi-year
Yeah.
deal, and then recently Kirby Jean Raymond with Pierre
Right,
Moss.
Pierre Moss. So we celebrated our 20th anniversary. So we sat down, the whole team, and we talked about, we celebrated 2018 was our 20th anniversary. So we sat down in 2017 and really started planning that 20th anniversary and what does it look like and what do we want to do and what kind of moment we want to leave. And we all sat down and we talked about some collaborations. We talked about Bloomingdale's was our original store we sold. We went back to Bloomingdale's for a pop-up. We did a collaboration with Jean Michel Basquiat, which was sort of taking on that moment of art and culture and what his message was is relevant to what is happening today. So one of the things, I don't know if you guys know Jean Michel Basquiat, but his first tag was SAMO, which stands for same old shit. And his message was what was happening in his community with African American people is the same thing happening now. So it was important for me to look at that and say, how do I bring that forward? And that's why we use Jean Michel Basquiat. It was that messaging that he was utilizing at the time. So that was very successful. And Tiffany, who does marketing for us, and this is a perfect example. Tiffany did a great job in marketing for us. We did an installation in Chelsea for Jean Michel Basquiat during Fashion Week one Thursday night. It cost us maybe $60,000. We got 33 billion impressions. So that's what I mean. So we look at the investment and what do you get from it. So when people want to do fashion shows, what is the investment and what is your expectation? So Pierre Moss was interesting. Kirby was interesting. When we met with him, he reminded me that I used to be part of an organization called BRAG, Black Retail Action Group. And he reminded me that, Jeffrey, you gave me a $35,000 scholarship to start my business. That's why I'm here today. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. So the collaboration made sense for us. And he's doing well. And Scott worked with him and the group worked with him and it was good. So we did quite a few things for our 20th anniversary.
And it seems in that, thinking about him, thinking about some of the other design, public school, Dine, Chris Bevins.
Chris Bevins.
I heard about, the times when there were shows and you were asking for more black designers, because you're helping people. You're helping these emerging designers. What are you looking for in these emerging designers to help, to possibly have an opportunity with Sean John?
Talent is one. Willing to learn. Vibe. But it's really talent and willing to learn. I meet a lot of designers who are already want to be designers. Like it takes time. Like Scott, how many years have you been designing, Scott? 23 years. But it takes time. Have you taken the time to learn how to cut a swatch properly? And so I look for talent, raw talent. Can we mold this person into what our needs are and what is right for the market? And do you vibe with them? Do they want to learn? Are they ambitious? That's what we look for.
Is there a possibility we could do a casting? And you coach them and tell them the truth and say,
oh, absolutely. Well, I don't know. Tell them the truth. We do it all the time. We do it all the time. We meet with young talent all the time, Scott and I, and we give them advice. We give them pointers, and whether they take it or not is But yeah, I love doing stuff like that. Absolutely, love doing stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all clap. That might be some hope there.
Yeah.
All right.
One of the things, there's always hope, right? But I always tell people, and this sounds maybe very raw, your only fans can't be your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, and your brothers and sisters. That can't be your only fan, because those people are not going to say it's bad. But how do you get out into the street? How do you get out? When we launched our first fragrance, Unforgivable, we actually had tests, a little bottle done, and we went to the streets of Brooklyn, and we sprayed it on people. Excuse me, can I spray you? See what you think? Excuse me, can I? They didn't know what it was because the bottle didn't have any name on it. And they didn't know, it was not, who we had do it wasn't out there in the Sean John shirt. Excuse me, what you think? Nah, it's just terrible. Oh, that's nice. That's where you get your real test. So if you have a T-shirt or a hat or a film, show it to people, but don't show it to just the family. Show it to people, and and be open to criticism.
Cool.
Be open to criticism.
All right. Now, paint the picture. Yeah, because we're gonna end about 8:15, 8:20, and then do some questions, and then about 8:30 we'll do presentation.
Okay.
Constance arrives, so we got a little while to go.
Mm-hmm.
But paint the picture so people can really understand what it was like when y'all was starting out. There were 35 other brands?
It was when we first. Well, what we did again, preparing yourself for the challenge, preparing yourself for what you want to do. And what we did was that when Puff and I first started the brand, I made it clear to him that you need to embrace the fashion world. They love you as producers, a rapper, artist. You're great at that. Mm-hmm. Prettiest girlfriends, know how to party. You got it. But the fashion world hasn't embraced you yet. So what I did is I said, I want you to go to as many fashion shows as you can, and I want you to sit front row. Because what happened, again, taking the steps before you took the elevator, by time for us, when it came time for us to do our first collection, the editors in the store would go, oh, I see why he was at the show. He was learning. Right. He was embracing it. And he was there appreciating what was being done. Right? As opposed to just coming out with a line. Who the hell does he think he is? Right. So we both took the time to embrace it. And we showed the first collection to a lot of editors. We come up and see what you think. What do you think? You like it? Don't
so
like
you did
it?
a lot of testing.
We did. You have to. We have to. But so we took our time and embraced the fashion industry. And in the first fashion show we did, people were ready to throw bricks at us, to be honest. They really were. Because who is this guy Puff Daddy to do such an elaborate fashion show? Who does he think he is at Fashion Week? You're supposed to be downtown. You're supposed to be in Bryant Park.
They threw bricks at Puff.
They were ready to, but they kept them, after that first 5 models walked out, they put them bricks away. That's your brick. You bought that here, didn't you? You know.
That do you?
And then that first show, we just killed them. And they were running to the back to meet this king.
Right.
Right? But that took time to get there. It wasn't.
Well, yeah, because I heard or I read that at one point people were saying, I'm not wearing Puff Daddy's clothes. I don't like him.
Oh, yeah.
But then all of a sudden it turned around and they were saying this is hot.
Yeah.
So, and now, 2020,
right.
Sean John is left and the other brands are in the single digits and they're reviving. So
what
did you do?
When we started the brand, there was 36 brands out there, and I'm counting the Meccas and the Academics and the Ralph Laurens and the Calvins and the Tommy, all those brands. And it was challenging, but our business plan, our motto was always, we don't chase the money, we chase the dream. So we never did it for the money, we did it for the dream and how big this could be. So a lot of those other brands, also it was a different level. Though a lot of those brands weren't black owned. A lot of those brands were other owned. So it was about how big and quickly can we get the money. And Puff was a marathon versus sprinting for the money. And those brands in 2008, 10 just fell by the side. They couldn't last. They didn't exist. And they didn't move. They didn't change. They stayed baggy. They stayed loud. They stayed big logos. They didn't understand how to transition into a lifestyle brand, which means that how do you start doing suits now? How do you start doing fragrances now? How do you start doing underwear now? How do you start doing all these other things that builds a true lifestyle brand? And
how do you do that transition? What do you do? What's your strategy for doing that?
It's all timing. It's all timing of what's next. We knew our first licensing deal would be for outerwear, to do outerwear jackets with the best manufacturer does outerwear. Then we knew in 9 months we wanted to do this in the next category, in the next category. So it was always lined up in a 3-year plan for us.
And it was always back to that plan.
Always back to the plan. Yeah,
back to the plan.
And keep in mind, this was a very profitable company. We could have just done anything and been sporadic, but that's not what the plan was. So, and the initial pushback from customers and retailers, getting your foot in the door. Talk about that minute, that moment, and what do you say to designers now who are having that pushback and trying to get in the door? You know, I learned something from Carl Kanai when I used to work for him. He did something very interesting. He had no distribution in New York City. Everybody know Carl Kanai back in the day? Yeah. He had no distribution in New York City. All of his distribution was small accounts in LA where he was based. So what he did was quite a marketing genius, I think. And you guys think it might not be a big deal, but I thought it was a genius. The Source magazine and Vibe was the popular magazines then, right? So what Carl did was he did a photo shoot and he placed an ad in Vibe and Source magazines. Now the biggest account at the time on the East Coast was Dr. J's. He placed an ad in both of those magazines, Carl Kanai, available at Dr. J's. It wasn't available at Dr. J's. So what he did was genius, and it had the phone number to Dr. J's. So everybody would call up and say, "Hi, do you have Carl Kanai?" And they would go, "No, what the hell is Carl Kanai?"
Wow.
So now he waited a month and called the buyer up at Dr. J's and say, "Hey, it's Carl Kanai again." "Yeah, people been calling for your stuff." So now, again, investment of a Source magazine, which was $6,000 back then, and the return. And I was like, damn, that was smart. So what he did was he created a demand for his product.
Right.
Right? He created a demand for your product. So magazines is the same thing as phones right now. Digital,
Instagram.
right? Instagram, it's the same thing.
And I mean, it is Black History Month. You've made history on a couple of accounts. And then I'm gonna get out of order because I know I have like the headlines on that. But you have where you CFDA award, but then the first live streaming show on Instagram.
Right.
And that was with the E Network and.
Well, it was two things. Puff had an idea of.
Yep, that's.
This was yeah. Puff had an idea that when Instagram was in its infancy stage, he said, "Why don't I do a show on Instagram?" So what he did was he posted a picture every like minute of probably 30 looks. So you actually, in your hand, could see the show of all the looks, which was pretty. Now it's no big deal, but back then it was pretty revolutionary. It was really pretty cool.
Right.
And your second question was.
Well, talking about this,
and
the
then
Instagram piece.
The E Entertainment, that was the Instagram show. And then E Entertainment, our third show, I think it was, right, Scott? E Entertainment, third show? E Entertainment that was big at the time was looking to cover a live show in real time.
Okay.
On network, 20, 30 million people. And they asked the CFDA, they asked Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week, who should they cover? And everyone said you should cover the Sean John show. So there was the first time you saw cameras from all different angles and it was streamed live right directly to TV. Now, it's a beautiful thing to have, but that means you got to start on time. Which is, most fashion shows run like 35, 40 minutes behind. But we were able to achieve it. It was amazing. It was such great exposure for us, which was great.
And another pivotal moment, and I probably messed them up. I have a picture of this. Puffy Takes Paris, where he appeared with Kate Moss, the John Paul Gaultier, Karl Lagerfeld, all of the Alec Weck.
Yep. This was killer.
How did that?
This was when we first. This was probably in '97, '98, and this is when we first started the company. And this is a perfect example of embracing the fashion industry. This was Vogue magazine. This was Anna Wintour, and again, embracing the culture. And they thought like, okay, Puff Daddy's embracing it, and this is a perfect example of how we, took the steps before we took the elevator.
Was that
this
a
was
major?
really set off for us. This was big for us.
Talk about how big of an impact that made. Was that your idea?
No. I wish I could take credit for that one. No. This was really Vogue's idea, and it was shot by Anna Leibovitz, who's major, and it was at the time Puff's manager was Benny Medina, did a great job in solidifying this, and it was just Anna with her thought of, Puff Daddy, beautiful man, and the one of the best models in the world, and take over Paris. And how do we shoot this together? It was strictly fashion's beautiful spread, and obviously, Puff in his signature white, gorgeous picture. So
what did that do for your brand? What did that do?
Well, this article gave us an opportunity for him to speak about Sean John. So it was a 3-page article on him. He spoke about the brand over and over and over and over. So at that time, that circulation was in the millions for Vogue. So we had a lot of eyes on it. I could see it. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So, and of course, you know, you've navigated the company through some challenging times and you did it quite well. So for others, I mean, there was, you know, the company, if I have it correctly, evolved over 6 short months, and it was after a Magic trade show. In the first 5 years, it has been said, I've read, that there was a demonstration of consistent ability to succeed on the runway and at the cash register. So then there was the 9/11. And in specialty stores, it was selling out and closing, but Sean John survived. Then in 2003, it's reported that Ron Burkle invested millions in the company. Yet it has also been reported that Sean John faced some challenges financially in that time. Yet you purchased Anichi, a former competitor,
Anichi brand.
at $94 million less than Liz Claiborne actually
Asked for.
it.
Yeah. Derek actually did that deal. He did a great job with that deal. I think we bought that brand for like under $10 million.
We can't tell those secrets.
Oh, I'm sorry, we
can't
can't tell the secrets. But that was again Puff, you know, understanding his consumer that couldn't afford Sean John. So we bought a Nietzsche and we really went and sold that to JCPenney's and Kohl's.
Right, okay.
But the label said a Sean Combs company in the label, but not on the garment. So this consumer who loved Puff was part of his world now with a Nietzsche brand.
Okay.
So that's why we did the brand. That's why we bought it.
Buying it at that type of loss, did that hurt Sean John?
No.
No?
We bought it from Liz Claiborne at their loss, not our loss.
Okay.
They wanted more. They wanted 90-something million for it. We came in and bought and offered something cheap and got it for cheap.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
It wasn't our loss.
So placing it like that, you know, how did you turn that brand? Is it because you placed it in those locations?
Yeah, because we didn't want. It was foolish for me to compete with myself.
Right.
So I didn't want to buy a brand to compete next to Sean John. That didn't make sense. So if I was at Macy's and Bloomingdale's and Up and specialty stores, how do I develop a brand that I can go Kohl's and JCPenney's? And Sean John jeans at $100. How do I create a jean at $24.99 for this consumer? And that's what we did.
Incredible. So being able to survive some of those times, how was Sean John positioned? Because, I mean, you survived 9/11.
Yeah.
How were you positioned better than other companies, and what do you tell companies so they can position themselves? Because, hey, history is cyclical.
Yeah,
Something will happen again.
Right.
What's the strategy for positioning yourself for that?
Well, one of the things we did is we laid stake in the game. And what I mean by that is most of those companies, when I say there are 35, 36 companies, and Alan, who's my vice president of sales, was very instrumental in this. If we took a space that was, 60 square feet, if we performed in that space, we asked for more and more. And then eventually what we did is put in shops, because that was a blueprint of Ralph Lauren. If you look at Ralph Lauren's business, over $1 billion, $12 billion business, every place you go, there's a shop, there's an environment. And majority of our stores is the same thing. So what happens is that, I shouldn't say this, you sort of get, if things go bad, you sort of get like a year and a half to get your shit together. Because they can't really replace that big shop. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So if you had that kind of space, I mean, you look at Tommy Hilfiger, he had the biggest shops in 94, 96, 97, 98. His business went like this. Brick, real fast, right, Alan? Real fast. And stores couldn't replace those 2,000 square foot shops, though. What are you replacing it with? So they had to work with him to fix the product, to get it right, to give him an opportunity. So what we did is lay the stake. And that's one of the things that was smart with Puff and Derek, is that we invested in ourselves in those spaces. So we put in the tables and the rack and the salespeople and the back wall and the photography. We pay for that ourselves. So if you go to any Macy's doors or Bloomingdale's, those racks and things you see now, the chandelier, we pay for all of that. But that's our investment for the long term. So you have to invest in yourself.
Right.
You have to invest in yourself. You can't wait for anybody else to invest in you.
And in talking about that, because you're forever a student, talk about that importance, that investment in yourself. You know, people are investing in Fashion Week, but investing in good quality classes and keeping yourself up to par. What are your thoughts? What are your words?
I mean,
on that?
I'm always learning and reading and understanding what makes a company our study of Alibaba, which is on her. Anybody familiar with Alibaba out of China? I mean, the things that he was able to do with Alibaba was just nuts. And they continue to grow. And they just start selling product online at the right price, no name. There was no front page to show what it was, and they just did an amazing job. I look at that. I look at Zara. I study Zara, and I look at Zara is really not about fashion. It's about the data. It's the data that they collect. That know that store only needs that kind of sweater. This store needs this kind of sweater. It's the data. So I'm always learning. I'm always looking at Nike and their technology. I'm always looking at malls, and how malls traffic and what they do. And Simon Malls, that owns the majority of the malls in the United States, is now realizing that stores are going out of business. They're now buying brands. They just purchased Forever 21 Hour. I think they just purchased Forever 21. So what they're saying is that I have these malls that I own. I got to put some shit in here. So I might as well buy a brand to put in here that I own it, I run it, and it's in my mall. Because otherwise, they're gonna have no space. I mean, the space is just gonna be empty. So I'm always learning and looking at those kind of opportunities. I mean, I like what The Real did. I mean, out of nowhere, they did a great job. So I'm always reading how these companies sort of branded themselves and how they were creative in understanding the market and understanding the demographics and the psychographics of people, and understanding truly what the white space is as well.
So,
Does that mean time's up?
I hope not. I want to make sure, because I can't see, is Constance already here? Okay, great. I should have known. Well, a couple more questions. We'll do some questions, and then we will get to the highlight for the evening. Alina Romero, she's been great with me for this. She quotes in her book, player haters in the urban fashion game would always trash talk about Tweedy, labeling him a dreamer, and very few of his peers took him seriously as a key executive because of his hit-or-miss track record. Yet now I sit here with you. Women's Wear Daily has placed you in the Power 100. Mr. Magazine has named you as one of the most fascinating men in fashion. You've led a brand to lasting 20-plus years in a fashion industry that is it's a global sensation, producing over 180 million in sales annually. Beat out 35 other competing brands and bought one of the competitors. I have to ask, is there anything you want to say to your haters now?
I don't know if we. Thank you. I think it sort of comes with the bad boy territory. It does. I mean, you have people that just hated Puff. Next thing you know, they sort of twitch into the music, like, oh, that's just right. And it's just Alan and Scott were with me, and we just did things differently. We just did we would show up at Magic, which was the retail Vegas show in Vegas, the men's fashion show in Vegas, where you sell to all the stores, and we would have the biggest booth. People walk up and be like, what the fuck? And I would be like, well, no, I want it to look like there's water in the middle, and I want stairs that go like this, and because that was our image. Mark Echo from Echo Clothing wrote in his book. He said it was something like he said he felt he had a big business until he was going to Magic, boarding the plane, and realized that he felt he had a big business when he was boarding the plane in Magic, and the first time he sat in first class, he was excited about going to Magic. Then he realized probably 8 of Sean John employees all dressed the same way were sitting in first class as well. So that's the way we moved. And I think image is everything. Image is very important. And it was, the haters, you always going to have that when you're doing well. I like everyone. I like everyone. I do. I do. I like everyone. I don't.
What would you say?
And that's the reason I like that song, So Ambitious.
So ambitious. We need to play that
Jay-Z
again?
quotes, and tell me wrong. Jay-Z quotes, he says, we don't shoot at the same basket. We don't hang with the same ladies. We don't live in the same zip code. What is it? We don't pay the same taxes. And he goes, so why am I in the way? Right? So that song is like, and I'm not cocky like that, guys, but but that song is like, that's one of those things that just like keep you, right? But also I like the song Never Would Have Made It, right? Never would have made it without you. Yeah. Never would have.
Can you sing?
No. That song, don't stop playing that song because I'll break down. That was like, that song does something to me. I've been flying to Paris first class, and that song comes on my iPad, and I start thinking about my mom and being first class crying. And be like, what is wrong with him? That particular song, but it's a beautiful song though. You guys should listen to that song. It's a very like never would have made it without you.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be a lot of people in your life that helped you get where you are today. That song is powerful.
What are some?
That's my church, Derek, right?
What are some of your habits that make you a success? Your daily routine, you know?
Why y'all looking at me like that? What are some of my habits, some of my daily routines? That's a tough question.
Because it's ingrained in you.
Probably one of my habits is, why can't I? Why can't we? And my team know I say that all the time. Why can't we do that? Sure we can. And sometimes it's not always, you can't always do that, but I try in my life. I try to do. And also, every day I try to be a better person. And I'm working on that a lot lately.
Me too, don't worry.
I'm working on that a lot lately, more than ever.
Well, two questions that, well, really one, because you talk about your team, and it's been said that a manager can only be as great as their team. What do you say to designers who are here or who may listen to this or will listen to this later? What keys do you offer to them for picking out that great team?
I think it's vibe first. I've always told someone, you read a resume, it could be printed on gold. That don't mean you're going to vibe with someone. Doesn't mean they're going to fit into your company. Doesn't mean they're going to understand your brand DNA and your vision. And I think when you select people that have the same ambition as you. Select people that have the same drive as you. And I hate to keep bringing that, but Puff does a great job at that. The majority of people that work with Puff have been with him for a long. Derek, how long have you been with Puff? 13 years. So 19 years. So the majority of people that work with Puff, who is very successful, work with him for a long time because he selected those people that had the same ambition, that couldn't accept the word I can't. So as you curate your team, find those people that have the same drive as you, that want to work all night, that don't want to accept the word I can't, that is unwilling to lose. And there are people out there. There are people out there. Because before you do anything, whatever the T-shirt is, or whatever the film is, or whatever the music is, you got to have that drive. Because there's smart people out there doing great films. There's smart people out there designing. There's smart people out there doing those things. But you gotta have that drive. It's got to be something different about you to have that drive.
Okay. And the last picture of Sean Combs. When you talk about that, it's been quoted that he says, and clearly he picks top people. He picked you. And look at his brand. And he says, Jeff was the first employee of Sean John, and nobody understands our brand DNA better. He's dreamed further for this brand than even I have. Without Jeff, there would be no Sean John.
Thank you. Yeah. I like that quote. It's a good quote. But at the same time, you have to have the right team around you. I couldn't have done this on my And I honor my team. I love my team. I'm personal with my team. I care about my team. I care about their families. And they know how I am. And that's important, because if you don't have a good team around you, can't do everything.
Right.
And I had to make sure I had the right team around me to make sure this brand is successful.
Applause.
Yeah.
So I'll take a couple of questions. If there are any questions, if you'll hold up the card, if you fill that out. If not, we do have a mic. But what I'm going to do is ask these two first, and then I'll take maybe a couple more. This young lady sent this to me from London. She wanted to be here, but she had challenges getting a flight here. So I told her that I would ask these questions for her. She said, given the rise of social media, fueled by powerful algorithms combined with a cachet of influencers, how do emerging Black creatives, especially from the realm of fashion, harness these tools effectively without robbing a bank or clout, cashing in order to gain valuable exposure?
Again, is getting the right people around you. But with social media, there are people out there that have 50 followers, and there's people out there that have 50 million followers. And one of the easiest things to do is send someone something with a nice note. And that note simply says, it could be just dead as honest. I'm a young up-and-coming designer. I cannot pay you for a post, but I would really appreciate if you could post so I can get my business started, and I will repay you in the future. I mean, I'm just being dead, just that simple. And I think they'll do it. Or you say to someone, if you really feel strong about that influencer, contact that influencer, DM that influencer and say, I'm starting a new company. You are my demographics. You're the lifestyle of my brand. You understand what you do is part of my DNA. And I would love to discuss with you how you could be my partner in this. Mm-hmm. Maybe you give that person 5% of a company that you don't really have yet. But that 5%, 10% can mean a lot to that person. Right. And that's what I mean by having people around you that understand it. It's not always about having a dollar. It's give somebody a percent of something.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And her next question.
You know, LL Cool, when Damon started FUBU, he couldn't pay LL Cool J to wear that hat in the Gap magazine. I mean, the Gap commercial. You guys remember that? When he did that T-shirt commercial, he had the FUBU hat on. And in his rap, he said, for his buyers. And Gap people didn't know what the hell he was saying. They let that run, which was the craziest thing. They spent millions to promote FUBU's brand. He couldn't afford LL Cool J, but he gave him a percent of the company. Mm. He gave him a small percent of the company. And look what happened. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is a lot of times is that people start companies and they get excited about owning 100%. I would rather own 30% of something that's making money than 100% of nothing and doing nothing. That's sitting on your table. I own 100% of that. Well, what have you done with it? Nothing. I'm working on it. I'm still working on it. I'm going to get it done, as opposed to owning 40% of something that's making money. Because there's this word you could always use. It's called renegotiating. People tend to forget that. You could sign a deal for 18 months with someone, 2 years, 3 years, and you could put in there, renegotiate after 3 years. That could be done. Then you see what your real value is. Yeah.
Okay. And she says, what was your worst rookie mistake in the fashion business that became a significant lesson to educate others?
Wow. That's a tough one. That's a great question. I had some failures. I just don't want to tell y'all about them. I don't know.
Well, and you know what? I'll say this. When you think about some of the failures that you did have, how did you keep going? How did you get up and keep going?
What my failures were being, if I could put a word to it, too aggressive. Yeah, being too aggressive.
Okay.
Being too aggressive, yeah. Like, take your time.
Okay, the steps, so take
your
the
time.
steps.
Sometimes you get too aggressive.
Is that how you came up with take the steps first?
Yeah, but just being aggressive. Sometimes when you're going like this, you just think you're fucking Superman. And sometimes you gotta, okay, just breathe and stick with the plan and don't be too aggressive. I think being too aggressive sometimes.
Okay. One or two.
Tiffany?
Okay, so one, maybe three questions from the audience. Did anybody have a card or a question? Where, someone did? I can't see you for the light. What?
This is custom. Mine. No, custom.
Questions, business questions.
I do wear Sean John suits, but this one's custom.
Business question. Y'all forgive me, I can barely see you for the light.
Hi.
Can you talk a little bit about
Mic, you need a mic?
I'm here.
Hi, I'm Jackie Jenkins.
Hi, how are you?
I'm here from FIT
How are you,
and
Jackie?
wanted to say thank you for your comments. Can you share a little bit about where you see the business heading in general and some of the things that are going on in terms of the luxury market in China, some of the questions about the U.S. economy, and how consumers are really embracing brands in a different way
Right.
in terms of experiences over items?
Well, the China market is at a standstill because of what's going on with the that we know about. But the China market, LMVH quoted a while ago that I think they said 68% of their sales will be from China. It's the largest growing market right now in all of Asia. I think we're in a world of digital where Instagram and online sales and e-com is very important to everyone. So the retailers have got to do a better job at getting you to walk in that store again. I remember Marvin Trout, who used to run Bloomingdale's, right? And he used to quote all the time that he wanted people to walk into Bloomingdale's and make it feel like it was theater. And I think the retailers got away from that. I think the retailers put it up like they're gonna come no matter what. No, how do you get my dollar? And I think what is happening is that people like LVMH, thank you. LVMH has done a great job at theater. Rather it's Virgil with Louis Vuitton, rather it's them taking over Tiffany's and redoing the way Tiffany's look again. They've done a great job. They're not relying on e-com and relying on that consumer that wants to do it by phone. And I think that even Jeff Gannett, who's a dear friend of mine who runs Macy's, he's challenged with that. And they've got to create an environment where you feel good about walking in that store. Thank God there's people that want immediate gratification by going into a store versus waiting for it to come through mail. But I think they got to do a better. I think they have to do a better job at retail. Otherwise, it's going to be dangerous out there if they don't do a better job. And some of them done a great job with it. Some of them have. Hopefully that answers your question.
Awesome. So I want to thank Jeff Tweedy so much, and as we're giving him a round of applause, I would like to bring up Constance White, award-winning editor, author of How to Slay.